Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. For almost 30 years, I brought you a message that to some of you is difficult. Difficult because it flies in the face of that which you think, or flies in the face of that which you've been told, or what you think is supposed to be. And what we have told you for all these years slowly is when the real truth starts to come out, it's not going to sit well with those who thought they knew what they thought they knew. We also gave you some axioms of consciousness, and we'll say them again. Consciousness, intelligence, intellect has a ceiling. A fool does not know they're a fool, dear ones. A human does not know they're limited. If you ask an intellectual who is so proud of their high thinking, they will say, I am capable of thinking anything. And the answer is, no, you're not. Human being, you live in 4 dimensions. This is how you live. We said this before. Even science tells you that atomic structure has at least 11 dimensions, more like 27, depending upon the physicist you speak of. So if the atomic structure of your body has at least 11 and you're living in 4, you might think to yourself, well, there's a lot we don't know yet. And you'd be right. Your intellect, your consciousness, your intelligence is all in 4 dimensions. And you can't really think in a multi-dimensional way. You think you can, but you can't. And we've said this before. You're in black and white, and God is in color. And if an angel comes down to you and starts talking about the beautiful reds and greens and blues and rainbows, you have no idea what the angel's talking about. But you want to know, and you think you know, and so you interpret it in shades of gray. But you don't know color. You have no idea. That is the metaphor for a 4-dimensional creature. Even with high consciousness, when you speak to that which is a multidimensional creator. All of this to say to you, I want you to use some spiritual logic. There's a lot you don't know. And then there would be those, because humans are so linear, that says, well, I'm interested to know them. Would you please write them in a list? And the answer is, when you become multidimensional, dear ones, there is no list. Somebody looks in your eyes who you love dearly, and you have maybe experienced this, and they look in your eyes and hold your hands and they say, I love you with all my heart. Ooh. And you turn to them and say, could you make a list? Why is that funny? Because you know it's impossible. Because love prevails in almost a multi-dimensional form. Can you imagine the strength, the power, the majesty of the love of God compared to a human being, an animal? Can you even begin to fathom that's color, and you can't see it and you don't know it, and what you do instead is you take that which you do know, which is your consciousness, and you do your best to then paste it upon the Almighty. This is the mind of God. This is what God wants. This is what God thinks. This is what God allows. All of these things, that's your perception as a human to that beautiful color that you can't even see. What I'm telling you, dear, ones is there's so much love here. And you don't really understand it. What is it about the human being that says, I must understand it before I accept it? So the person who stands in front of you and says, I love you with all my heart, are you going to say, not until you get the list and believe it? And you don't. And instead you feel it with your heart, and the two of you intertwine in a way that is so multidimensional, and minds and hearts and consciousnesses become one. And that's falling in love. Is it too astonishing or far out or inappropriate for you to believe that there is a creator who can look in your eyes and say, I love you? So many humans will look back at that and they'll say, can you be more specific? Because that's not what I've been taught. You're too big, you're too grand, you're too wonderful, and I'm just a human. So let's talk about humans for a moment. I love to talk about humans because, dear ones, humans are a piece of my family. Every master who's ever sat in front of you told you that God is inside you. Everyone. Then it's been up to the human beings to then interpret what that means and how far it goes. Instead of saying, oh, it's astonishing. I'm a piece of God. That means I can do anything with my partner, the creative source. But that's not what happens, is it? What makes the difference in the animal kingdom between you, for instance, and a horse, an elephant, a pig, a dog, cat? They're all intelligent animals, you know, but you are the most intelligent. Those who think of these things and relate to these things and write books about these things will say, well, the human being is so intelligent, they have an intellect, and that intellect then gives them that which is apart from any other animal in the kingdom of the planet, and that is you can analyze yourself. You can ponder your own consciousness. That's how smart you are. And it occurs to you, you came from somewhere else. They're that smart. Now I'm going to refute that and talk a little bit about it. Intelligence has no relationship to the pondering of the love of God. Intellect has no relationship to the pondering of the love of God. Consciousness does. You are the only animal with a consciousness who knows the Creator. And all of this stems back to an event that almost every spiritual organization or non-organization on this planet claims to have happened. In your society, your culture, you'll call it the Garden of Eden. That's not what others call it. But there was always a crux of time, not that long ago, where an angelic source came to this planet and gave you free choice. And if you follow the illustrations and the intuitions of those who drew that event, even in the Garden of Eden, you had two beautiful humans looking just like you. Not cavemen, not animals. It was you, looking just like you do today, not that long ago. And you were imbued with free choice. The Garden of Eden is the metaphor of the earth. The humans who stood in front of the angels is the metaphor of men and women. And the angelic source is the metaphor for God, the Creator. who came to this place and changed you. Now, scientists have notated something changed in your DNA 200,000 years ago. What a coincidence. They don't relate it to a creation story, but humans all have 23 pairs of chromosomes instead of 24, like everyone below you on the biological chain. And I've talked about that before, and I'm not going to talk about that now. I'm just going to say that this is common to almost all humanity, all religions, all belief systems. Something happened, and you now have free choice. So what was that something? How far back can you go in history to take a look at what humanity thinks about the Creator? Does a dog think about the Creator? No. You say, well, a dog is not smart enough. Dear ones, it's not smart that we're talking about. It's the consciousness of knowing that you're not alone. You came from somewhere. Oh, but there's more. There's a consciousness of knowing not only were you created by something bigger, there's something inside you that's multidimensional called a soul. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with intelligence or intellect. It's self-awareness. When did this begin? I'll tell you, at the moment the angel touched you, human being, and gave you free choice and gave you God within in every single cell, that you could start to think about it. There's something bigger than me. 80% of this planet believes in the afterlife, dear ones. You think that's because they're smart? You think that's because they're intellectuals? How old is humanity? How far can we go back to check this out? If you ask a sociologist, say, well, you get maybe 10,000, 11,000 years, but there's nobody around that you can interview. Did you know that there are those who have a culture that is 40,000 years old? And today they're doing exactly what they did 40,000 years ago. They know their lineage, they know their family, they know their tribe, they know how they lived then, because it's how they live today. 40,000 years. Is this conjecture, Kryon? No, it is proven in the last 3 years with DNA research, and I'm talking about the Aborigine in Australia. Sociologists, why are you sitting on your hands? Why don't you go interview them, ask them some questions? Because they believe today what they believed then. How can you exist on a continent for 40,000 years and not have overpopulation? Where'd you get your food? How did you solve the problems that a society today that's only supposed to be a quarter of your age are unsolvable? How did that happen? And yet no one's asking them. Not really. And the reason is because their answers are multidimensional. What did they believe? What did they believe? What does a 40,000-year-old human being on this planet believe? They know because it never changed. Here's what they believe. There's a Creator, and there's a soul, and there's an afterlife. Don't you find this something? Self-awareness, self-evident. They have the stories. To this day, they have the stories of who they believe created them, a greater source. And what is the positioning of the source? And this is critical. Tell us about the source. Aborigine, you've been there for 40,000 years. Tell us about your source. And they'll say, the source is filled with compassion and love. Now tell me about your source, dear ones. Because most of the culture here, you say, tell me about your source. They'll say, untouchable, judgmental, angry. You better do it right. Where does compassion and love fit into that? I would like to introduce you to the de-evolvement of love. I want you to go back to the original source and start asking them, So let's go back. Let's only go back maybe 7,000, 8,000 years. Let's talk to the first organized spiritual system called Hinduism. That's the first recorded one in this civilization. There were others before that. We told you that you'll find someday. But let's just look at them. What do they believe? They want oneness with everything. Did you notice that the Hindus have no prophet? They have helpers. They have little gods that help. The god of this and that and that. So do you. Sometimes they're plastic at your home. Sometimes they hang from your car. So do you. But they have no prophet. So where was their God? What was the epitome of their God? Who did they worship? And they said they worship all that is. Oneness with the earth, oneness with each other. An allied consciousness of love that is worldwide and human-wide and beautiful. And you can look in the eyes of any other human being and you can say, Namaste, I love you. The God in me honors the God in you, every single human being, not just Hindus. Did you know that? And if you ask them, well, where are your rules? They'll say the same thing the Aborigines did. They'll say they're self-evident. There's a right way to live. There's a wrong way to live. It's self-evident, isn't it? You treat others with love and compassion. Isn't that self-evident? Those are the rules. And they're not on tablet anywhere. And there's no consequences if you don't do it because, you see, we got free choice. Did you ever wonder about why a God would come down and give you free choice and then immediately judge you on your choice? Does that really make sense to you? Well, that is the prevailing belief today. What humans have done, yet again, and I tell you this, is they've taken the highest consciousness that they can think of as a human and placed it on the Almighty. Therefore, God has a human mind. Therefore, there's wars in heaven. Therefore, there's got to be fallen angels and corruption. Therefore, there has to be this and that. There has to be judgment. And there has to be, and there has to be. That's not God, dear ones. That's black and white. God's in color. There are those who would hear this message and not believe it and want to shut the door right away. And before you shut the door, let me just ask you, why are you afraid of love? That's what you're looking at. You're afraid of love. It's too great, isn't it? God is too grand. Therefore, you better not touch him. Don't go there. Burn your hand if you go there. I'm going to tell you, God's inside. Did you know that that hand of God is reaching out for you all the time, ready for you to take it? Because you're a piece of it. Every master, you're a piece of it. Why would you be separate? You're a piece of it. Let me tell you a story. I want to tell you a story about a great man. And I'm talking about a man among men who was compassionate and beautiful and had a kind heart. And he would stop and help everybody. Even from a time he was a child, he saw compassion in everyone. And he was brought up through his organization, and he did the best he could. He was almost a saint in that organization. Everything he did was perfect and according to the rules. He went to those places where he confessed. He went to those places where he could talk to God through an associate who could talk to God. He did all these things correctly, and he was a great man. There was probably no higher consciousness man than this, and he loved God. And then he died. And now we see him awakening without a body. And all he can see is light. And with these metaphorical, metaphysical, multidimensional eyes, All he sees is love and light and compassion, and it surrounds him. And he weeps with the joy when a voice that he hears somehow without ears says, welcome home. And somehow he sees all of his friends, even some of the friends that are still on earth. He sees their souls in this soup of light, a light that's so bright it sings to him. And he sees nothing but love. And they all hold his hands and they sing and they say, welcome home. And that part of him says, where's the judgment? Where are the things I was told that are so careful, or the step on a crack? You don't do that. Where are all these things I was told about? And then he made the realization, and then he saw it. I've been a good human, and I've spent all my life in the dark. There was light all around me. I took as much of it as I thought I could. But I was in the dark the whole time. You're alive. You're the ones listening to this. And so I'm saying, why are you afraid of love? It's simply too grand. Perhaps your box is your box because of what people told you it should be. Or that you have judged God with a human brain and you're living in black and white and color is around you saying, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you take my hand? You'd be shocked, you'd be surprised what happens when the human being starts to talk to their innate, which is part of your soul, which is on the other side of the veil, and healing occurs and spontaneous remission occurs. Do you think that would occur if this message was wrong? Do you? That is the point. Common sense, spiritual logic says that there's a God who loves you and is with you. And you can communicate with in love. And a consciousness that you have which intermingles with the Creator, which is just waiting to change your life. We've given you information about this for years. Consciousness of love and compassion will start to drop anxiety and you'll live longer. A human being ages for several reasons. Let's talk about the first one. It expects to. Number 2, how old are you supposed to be? How long will you be on the planet? Well, give me a minute. Let's Google it. Where is the self-empowerment here? For you to say, I am in charge of my cellular structure. I know there's a lifespan. I'm not stupid. But this lifespan of mine is not going to be in the hands of a culture who tells me how old I am and how I'm supposed to feel. Instead, I am light, and I'm going to feel alive and young for a long time. And I would like to tell you, epigenetics is real. That is, the cells listen, and they react to what you say when you believe it and when you cognize things. And so it's a bad habit, dear ones, for you then to buy into what others tell you about how long or how it works, or if you cannot heal a disease, because it normally doesn't happen that way. Until you start talking to your cells and you find out, my disease is disappearing. And you start saying, all I've done is something internal. Oh, it's not internal because you're a piece of God. The universe knows when you start healing yourself, dear ones. Is that too big for you? Are you afraid of love? Are you afraid to reach out and touch what you've been told you can't touch? That's the message. And it always will be. This planet is going to start seeing compassion and a change of not only attitude, But the young people are going to bring in some things. The bias itself of the old energy of how things used to work compared to how they will work is starting to shift a little. A little. We told you it would when you passed 2012. It's starting to happen. So tonight I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to give it to you in 5 sections, and we'll call it, What's Wrong with the Earth? As said by others. And we'll give you some things to think about, and everything we're going to talk about is going to be current. And we're going to invite you to listen in color. If such a thing is impossible, to go beyond what you've been taught, and don't write it down, just listen. And you might be surprised, because I'm going to give you some solutions, or at least some things to think about that will make you understand that this planet is going in a direction nobody expected. Slowly and against all odds, and fighting old energies and old biases. There's hope here. There's hope because light is starting to show in places there never was light before. Consciousness is starting to get out of black and white. Think of these things for now. God is love, and you are part of God. Look in each other's eyes and think of the Namaste. The God in me loves and sees. The God in you honors. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. This is the next to the last channeling session of the year. And it's in a place that my partner calls the homeroom. To him, that just means a place where he started. Hard to believe that it was almost 30 years ago. Hard to believe that the place where he's channeling is very close to where he started channeling. In those early days where he sat in the chair for the first time. There is a tradition here. And the tradition is this, that many times there would be a wrap-up, they say. Perhaps an exposure of things to come. We use this venue for this because it's symbolic of the end and the beginning. And so it is not an exception that tonight we'll go over some things. And all of these things that we wish to speak of and go over, dear ones, precious. If you believe such a thing, this is a voice from the other side of the veil through a human being, coming to you with love and gratitude because you need it and you deserve it. About the things that are changing on the planet, about the perceptions that you may have. And so we become current. And tonight, not only do I wish to discuss certain things, I wish to go beyond that. And the beyond that means I'm going to make some suggestions. And yet again, for those who are listening who are not here, I want to itemize some things that maybe you didn't think of, that need to be thought of. that need to be put together in a way perhaps you are not ready to do because you had to hear it first. Concepts, perhaps, that you need to know about. I'll start to say that everything I'm going to mention here is on your news. In some way, it's on your news. And if you look at it in a certain way, it looks like everything is falling apart. Kryon, it's past 2012 and it looks awful. You said things are going to change to the better. And again, I say, for those of you who would expect a magic fairy to come down and wave a wand and everyone thinks differently, that is not the way it works. Ideas churn through a civilization and a culture in a specific way. Ideas have to go through the barrier of belief, but especially that which we have called the old biases, which say, no, it can't be, or this is the way it is, or this is the way it was, and therefore the way it will be. The ones who say, woe is me, take a look at the awful things, and leave it at that. So let's talk about the awful things, one by one. The soothsayers, the ones that say, we're doomed. These are the ones who see what they see and have a perception of change in their own way. But it's there for you to look at. And dear ones, the first one is going to be American democracy. It's falling apart. And there are those who said this is going to be the demise of America. Because of what we have going on now, looks like the red and the blue hate each other so much we may have a war in Congress. I expect them to start shooting each other very soon. It's not enough that they call each other names. It's heating up. And that's not what the founding fathers wanted at all. And look, it's falling apart. There's nothing good about it. We're not seeing anything done at all. We told you years ago, dear ones, that your system is systemically broken. And that it might have been good for 250 years ago, but it's stale now. Because consciousness is changing. Well, if it's broken, it's broken. It's almost like we have elected officials and we put them in this glass house of earth and this social media where everybody can see everything and they get to watch the immense dysfunction of America. And they laugh. Billions of people watching it all crumble. That's number one. How do you like it so far? Number two, Kryon, we put our cities in the right place for the right reasons. We're running out of water. Something's happening with water. We have some of our cities who depended on water from certain places since the 30s. I'm sitting right now in one of them called Southern California, who has never had water. And they get their water from up north, where they have water, until recently, where they don't have water. Some cities are stopping the progress of building because they don't have enough water. They can't then water the things that are supposed to grow well in California. And that's just one place that's running out of water. We told you years ago there would be weather change. Do you remember? We told you what you now call several things today. Climate change probably is the most accurate. That there would be times and places that would change so greatly that once where there was water, there would now be none, and sometimes where there was none, there would be an abundance. Some of those who are listening saying right now, we've got too much water. What are you going to do about that? You sit in a state that's in trouble. That's number 2. Number 3, let's get current. Kryon, do you know about the garbage patch? We've got a garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean the size of Texas. Plastic is everywhere. It's hurting the ocean. It's hurting the life in the ocean. Can't do anything about it. It's just there. What are we going to do? Is this going to be the demise of the environment? Have we now seen what we've done? Everybody's seeing it. That's number 3. Number 4, Kryon, we have got pollution everywhere. We tried years ago. We tried at the United Nations and failed. Couldn't get the accord going. The pollution continues and continues, and the smokestacks continue and they continue. And we have then the earth heating up, and we have all of these things, and there are cities where you can't even see across to another building. People are coughing in the streets. We got pollution. And it's not getting better. Not that I could see. Not that we've been told. Number 5. Kryon, there's no way we're going to have enough energy. We keep pumping out all of this electricity, and we can't keep up. We just can't keep up. And then the electricity has to be created, of course, by anything that burns, and we've burned everything. We've got all kinds of ways of making electricity. None of them are safe. And it continues and continues, and it's just like a monster that eats electricity. What are we going to do? There's about 15 more. There's 5. I want to lead you through these 5 in a way, and I'm going to ask you to please be compassionate. Think out of the box of what you have been told. Think out of the box of what the news has put you into, a place of worry and anxiety and wringing your hands and worrying. Not being aware of certain kinds of things that we told you were coming. Is your politics broken? Yes, absolutely. Did we tell you that? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean it's doomed? No. When you have something that doesn't work, does it then mean forever it doesn't work? Have you made up your mind in advance that everything that you're seeing is so ugly and so immense that nothing ever can fix it? How many times have we told you what's coming here? Dozens. And yet somehow there are still those who haven't seen it, who don't understand. This is a process, dear ones, that we even warned you about in advance. It's got to break, and it is. And you're seeing it, and it's an embarrassment to the world. What do you think about a system that you have where literally ideas come together, they're discussed, an election happens, and winner takes all? And for 4 years or 8 years, the winner strives to beat up the loser. And then you have another election, and it may reverse, and that winner spends 4 to 8 years gloating and beating up the loser. And in the process of those 4 to 8 years, very little actually gets accomplished for America. You see, it's broken. I told you where it's going. The things that are coming, I want you to watch for. I'm going to call it, and you will laugh, elegant politics. The beginning of what I would call compassionate campaigning. No more name calling. And there's going to emerge a consensus, a confluence in the Congress, in the states, where you don't want to elect a leader or a president that just is one party. Because that president will then go into office and do what all the other presidents have done. Favor the one party because the voters wanted it? What if you had a centrist? Get ready for it. And the centrist said, I'm going to run for president because I can create agreement. I am good at negotiations. I'm good at knowing where they should go to compromise or not. I'm going to get things done. I don't represent either side, you see. Now, how many of you might be interested in that? Yeah? You feel it, don't you? Well, so will others. It's not that hard. So is it really broken, or does it simply need a compassionate tweak? You see? You see? And that would be called evolution. I'll tell you this, if you don't do it, other nations will. They see it coming too. You need a leader who can lead. And this is not an indictment of the current leader, it's an indictment of the system of winner takes all. This would be the evolution of democracy all over the planet. And it's time. How soon is it coming, Kryon? Yes. And there will be those of you who say, not soon enough. Listen, there are those who will hear this and agree. There will be those who have an aha moment. There may be even politicians who say, that's what I've been waiting to hear. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to be compassionate. And probably they will lose for a while. Because these kinds of things are not trusted yet. Well, he's got something he's hiding. She's not going to make it because I don't believe that she can actually do what she says or be compassionate. Oh, they're just holding back. They're not calling names yet, but you wait until they get in. But all of this is old bias, because you expect the worst. So how about the old souls listening to this? Start to expect the best. That's what it's going to take. You want to know how fast? It depends upon you. Kryon, we're running out of water. I want to give you a visualization right now. Let's pretend, just pretend, because you're on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, this is viable. Every single one in this room knows what it looks like to go to the ocean and look out and see that vast amount of water. And to look out upon it and sigh when the sun goes down and say, this is a beautiful place. Okay, let's extend that. What if every drop of water that you see in the ocean suddenly becomes viably drinkable? Would that change anything for you? And the answer is, are you kidding? You mean we can use the ocean? You always could. But it was difficult because the technology of desalination required heat and cost and electricity, none of which were there to have, and it was too slow. I am telling you there's something coming. And we've even given you hints of how it works. Let's expand that. You need to hear it again. For those who've never heard it, you need to hear it again. It's simple. You know, these things are not really simple, but the arrangement, the process, the idea is simple. And then there will those who will go with it, and it may take a couple of years for them to understand how to do it correctly. But that's how all inventions work. Once you have the initial idea, here's the initial idea. Are you ready? Make salt magnetic. And then pull it out of the water in real time with electromagnets. You can make salt magnetic in several ways, dear ones. I throw the gauntlet out to the inventors. Make salt magnetic. You will have a system then where you can have real-time pass-through desalinization without heat and without holding tanks. Comes in salty, goes out fresh. You pass it through 2 or 3 times, but eventually goes in salty, comes out fresh. You know those big tankers that carry 1 million barrels of oil? I want you to think for a moment of 1 million barrels of salt water converted to fresh in a tanker that can also have a desalinization plant within it. Just make salt magnetic and then pull out the salt with electromagnets, and you can do it. And there are some idea light bulbs going on right now to those listening to this. Do you realize this? Without heat in real time. That's how it's going to be done. That tanker, by the way, and the reason I bring it up, that can sit off your shore and do this. You don't even need land for it. Better still, it can go to places that don't have any fresh water now and start making it. Millions of barrels at a time. That is what's coming. And the ocean then becomes the resource. Not a resource that is going to hurt the ocean at all. It's going to water your crops. It's going to feed you. It's going to bring water to this state if you allow it, if you let it. Why would anyone object to this? You'll have to ask the objectors. They'll have reasons. And perhaps they'll say, yes, but what Kryon's not telling you is that there's going to be a lot of electricity involved here. Well, just stay tuned for a minute. I haven't got there yet. Kryon, we got this garbage patch. I want to ask you a question. You mean it was clean yesterday, and today you've got a garbage patch? And you will say, well, no, it took a while. Well, how long? And here's the answer. Since the invention of plastic. That's how long. Now, what do we have? 80, 90 years? That's how long that has accumulated in your ocean. It didn't just appear, dear ones. But something did just appear. You just discovered it. Not really. It was known 10 years ago. It was known 15 years ago. It's just that you didn't care. Now you do. Dear ones, welcome to the evolution of consciousness for yourself, for the planet, for existence. It's a worldwide event, and now it's news. It's been there for decades, getting bigger and bigger, and now you've discovered it. Not really. Now everyone knows about it, and now you'll have those who've decided to do something about it. Do you need new inventions? Not really. It's pretty simple. You just need funding to get out there and collect it. And you'll say, well, it's way too much to collect. If you do it slowly, in large amounts, over a period of time, it will start to reduce. Over a period of time, it'll even get smaller. There'll come a day when you celebrate the fact that the garbage patch is gone and that you did it. Because somebody funded it and somebody cared about the ocean, and that somebody is going to be human beings on this planet, and that's what's different. You act as though you're so alarmed that something that's been there for decades, like it just showed up yesterday on your backyard. The difference is awareness, caring, consciousness. Kryon, we have too much pollution. Yes, you do. And this is where it gets dicey, and I'll tell you why. Because every time I talk about this, there are objectors. There are those who might even leave the room. Because what I tell you is not what you've been told. What I tell you is this: you got too much pollution. Now stay tuned, because the next one I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to get rid of it. But for now, here's what I tell you about your pollution. And a lot of the other things that you suddenly are noticing with all of your instruments and all of the scientists. This pollution is killing you. It is not killing the earth. That's controversial. Keep pouring it out. If you want to die, and if you will, civilizations will go away and the earth will be just fine, thank you. It always has been. The earth is resilient and will recover even from humanity. So here is your instruction for the day. Stop polluting, because you're killing yourself. But the earth is currently in a cycle. And that cycle corresponds to this movement that you have of killing yourself. And so you then apply it to the planet and say, all of these things that are happening to the planet, you're causing it. Here comes the controversy. No, you're not. No, you're not. I'll say it again. Climate change that you are experiencing, including that which is the heating of the atmosphere, is cyclical. And the earth has done it before. And why your climatologists are not reporting it is because they haven't really looked at the records clearly. If you want to look at the ice cores and the tree rings, you're going to discover something amazing. That the earth does this on a regular basis. Go up into Alaska and talk to the indigenous about the movement of glaciers. They come and they go, and they come and they go, and they come and they go. Now, while you were born, they were there. Now they're leaving, and you're having a fit. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you want to talk about how often the cycles happen, there are cycles within cycles. There's 400-year cycles, 1,600-year cycles. And they go from hot to cold. And they do it so that the earth has a way of rejuvenating itself. We've said it before. If you have a fish tank, no matter how well you take care of it and aerate the water and the chemistry, no matter what you do, there comes a time when you got to change the water. Well, the earth cannot change the water. What it can do is with temperatures. It can rejuvenate itself, rejuvenate the fish, the life, all of these things. And it does it on a regular basis. But you've only been here a little while. You've never seen it. Not really. You're new. Can you imagine just for a moment, let's just pretend for a moment, that the lifespan of a human being was 2 months. Now that means you never saw winter, spring, fall, or summer. So let's just say in the 2 months that you're alive, doing your thing and all that, having all of your opinions, it just happens to be winter is approaching. And you've been through summer, and here comes winter, and all of the trees are starting to die, and the leaves are falling off. What are you going to do? Woe is me. The earth is dying. You have no idea. It does it every year. The leaves all fall off. The trees look awful. It looks like everything is dead for a while. And then here comes winter. If it wasn't bad enough, something called snow. He never saw that either. You see what I'm saying? There are bigger cycles you haven't been through yet, and yet the earth will give this information to you if you look for it. Meanwhile, the fearmongers are out saying, you've hurt the earth, you can't recover, you're doomed. This is really controversial now, what I'm going to tell you. You know that ozone layer? Remember that hole in the ozone caused by all those fluorocarbons and those things that you cleaned up in the last 30 years? You see, that ozone layer is closing up now. Congratulations for not understanding anything. Did you know that the ozone in general on the earth is starting to thin? Now, why don't you go back to the 60s and find out something they found out, that the ozone layer is relational to the magnetic field of the earth. Welcome to magnetic shift. The ozone would have done what it did, even if you weren't here. It's part of what happens on this planet on a regular basis. It's part of what happens in the radiant sun cycles. It's part of the shift of this planet and how it adjusts itself. And it's doing it again so that the humanity that is here in abundance and that will get more abundant and more populate will be able to have the food you need. How does that sound? That's controversial. Climate change is happening as it always has. And you're seeing the leaves fall off the tree and you're calling for help. You didn't cause it, dear ones. The pollution you're pouring into the air is killing you. That's not good. Clean it up. But this earth of yours, they know what they're doing. They, the Gaia, the elementals, all of the multidimensional life that has been here all along, churning through these cycles long before you ever got here to complain about them. That's controversial. I want to talk about energy. You're starting to see the value of electricity and the storage of it. More than ever before, you're seeing industry start to recognize that one of the key elements of everything you've ever done to create power has to be eliminated, and it's called heat. Every time you need to make power, you need heat. You need heat for steam, and steam then powers turbines which turn and then create electricity for you. And whether you're burning oil or whether you're burning coal or whether you're burning anything, you still have to have heat. So you're always going to burn something. There's some technologies out there that are showing you how you can burn things without smoke, but that's not the answer. The answer is don't burn anything. The answer is no heat. Kryon, you can't do this without heat. We told you that there's free heat if you wanted it. While you're burning all of these resources and pouring smoke into the atmosphere, we told you it's right below your feet. And the answer that the scientists gave to Kryon, they said, you mean geothermal? And Kryon says, yes. He says, it's too hard to get to. The hole you'd have to drill is it's technically impossible to drill a hole and have that to pick up the heat you need. It's free heat and you can have free energy and all that. We don't have the technology. It's just too hard. Let me interpret what you just said. We don't want to spend the money on that. We'd rather build a nuclear reactor, which has probably cost more. Now, have you seen the folly of nuclear power in the last few years, dear ones? You have had only 2 events so far on this planet with a runaway nuclear reactor. And I'm telling you, both those incidents are still poisoning the earth. They're poisoning humans. They're poisoning the land. They're poisoning the ocean. How do you like that safe power you built? It's the most dangerous thing you've ever done for humanity, for yourself, and it's cost a fortune. And if you had put that money into geothermal, you'd know how to dig a hole and get heat. But I'm not talking about digging a hole. Free energy has been the holy grail, if I can use the word, for a long time. Now, there's no such thing as free energy. First law of thermodynamics shows that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It simply changes form. So free energy isn't free energy. It's the description of energy you get from an unexpected source that does not get depleted. Is it possible? Oh, it's right in front of you. It's always been right in front of you. And it's called magnetics. I just want to paint a picture. If I haven't done it before, only this time I'm going to get more specific. Have you ever played with permanent unidirectional magnets? These are simply magnets that attract very powerfully and repel very powerfully, depending upon how you position them and the plus and the minus. Some of them are so powerful that two grown men could not pull them apart. Two grown men could not push them together. Imagine two grown men trying to push a positive and a negative together on magnets that are so strong that they simply will not go together. And the men would push and push and push. Question, what's the duration of the pushing before those magnets would go together? How do you like forever? Welcome to a power source. Are you understanding this? Magnetics has always been there. It pushes and it pulls. That's what it does. It pushes and it pulls. Have you ever seen a steam engine? Have you ever seen anything that makes power? It needs to push and it needs to pull. I want to tell you about a little engine. The little engine of magnetics. These are permanent magnets. There's no electricity involved, and you position them in a certain way on wheels, multiple wheels, where they would push and pull each other in such a clever way that they would push and pull each other until the wheels disintegrated and you had to get new wheels. But the magnets would continue and continue, and it would go for an eternity. Are you interested? And then there were those who would say, well, what good does a couple of wheels going around do for us? I'll tell you. And the inventors know this. Number one, I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to reveal something to an inventor listening to this who needs to know it, who has been working on that engine and really cannot get to first base. How can you make these things push and pull in a way? There's always a drawback. I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to go into the failure. I'm not going to go into the pluses and the minuses and why it doesn't work every time. And I will tell you, there's a twist to it, Mr. Inventor. Your wheels should be Mobius strips. I just gave it away. If you know what a Mobius strip is, now you know the joke. There's a twist to it. There's a configuration using Mobius strips and discs and magnetics that are permanent that will push and pull on each other in a way where they will continue and continue and continue and be 100% efficient. And then you have a wheel that goes around, and it doesn't matter how big or small it is. When any wheel goes around, it can make a little electricity. Are you with me? Now, that little electricity could then be connected to another larger wheel, which is electromagnets. In fact, that could be a very, very large wheel. Electromagnets have maybe 10 times the power. Now you have the same system and the same shape and the same Mobius strip, only these magnets are really powerful, and now you've got something that'll push and pull in a really, really big way. And yet you still don't have something that's really big. You can have power plants that will cover in just a few houses, dear ones. The grid is no longer necessary. Private power, free, using magnetics, is coming. And it's everything you'll ever need. You know those ships, those places that are using electrics for desalination? They got plenty of electricity using this method. They don't need to burn anything. Can you imagine an Earth without smokestacks? This can be applied to anything where you need push-pull energy. There are those listening right now that just had the aha that they asked for. Is this too far-fetched? Is this too science fiction-y for any of you? Or is it something that is so eminently practical that you might sit back and go, whoa, there could be promise? And the reason is because every objection to any of these is old energy, the way it used to be and the way you used to do it. The way it used to be and the way you used to do it is moving out. Watch for private industry to create this, not government. That will be the other secret. What you've counted on your governments to do because of their size and their funding, and because of the way government works, can be replaced by private industry, which then has an interest to do it more efficiently and better and to serve you and do a good job. Something governments don't necessarily have. Private industry. It's going to happen. Kryon, when are these things going to happen? Yes. When you support them and see them and don't think it's crazy. When you look for them in the news, when they start to be announced, when somebody comes up with it and you say, wow, I heard that in a Kryon meeting. Now, I haven't given anything this day which hasn't already been worked on, thought of, and in the process. And that should give you hope. Patience, dear ones. Most benevolent outcome. Don't wring your hands. This is the end of the channel. Don't wring your hands. I want you to start thinking about this. You passed the marker of 2012. It was always known that if you had passed this marker, and the ancients said it, that there would be a new human, a new humanity, a new consciousness. Does it make sense that the Creator who put you here in all your magnificence would say, look, they passed the marker. Good, let's snuff them out now. And that's what you're being told. Your spiritual organizations will tell you, well, you know, the Armageddon is still coming, that war that you haven't had for 80 years, well, still coming, you know. Your science fiction films, they say it all. There's been a shift of doom bias. And for the last 20 years, it's all been about a post-apocalyptic Earth. Aftermath of nuclear. And now that's getting old, isn't it? That's getting old because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Oh, they're shifting now. Now it's going to be an Earth that is so hot, nobody can stand it. In fact, it's so hot, aliens who love heat are going to come and take over. That's where it's going. How do you like what the script writers have decided to do for you? Give you doom on doom on doom. Look forward to some fresh air science fiction where the aliens are trying to help. Where the aliens want you and want your help and know things you don't know. And maybe, just maybe, along the line, there'll be somebody who comes to this Earth from another planet and looks at you and say, you mean you don't know? And you say, we don't know what? You don't know? And you say, we don't know what? And they shine like the sun, like an angel, and they say, you're magnificent in the eyes of God. This Creator, I know this Creator. The universe knows this Creator. There's some of us in the galaxy that know this Creator, and you don't? What's wrong with you? You're magnificent. You're part of creation. You're beautiful. Nobody told you? Yeah, I've been telling you. I've been telling you for almost 30 years. Things do not have to go bad here. You are in a change that begs you, literally, to say, it's possible. Wow. Are you aware of the power of multiple consciousnesses? You change things, you change the field, you change the integrity of thought when many human beings together are thinking in the same track. When they have a coherence of thought, when they're saying, I see it coming, there's an invention coming, we don't know about it, we don't know how it works, but we feel it's coming. There's another Tesla on the way. There may be numbers of them. They only may be 12 years old, but that doesn't stop it, because in a couple of years, they'll be old enough to put it together. We feel it coming. We celebrate it in advance. That's an old soul, dear ones. That's a mature, new human being. Countering the ones that would say, we're doomed. I can give you 18 reasons why we're doomed. Of course, I got them all on the news, but that's just the way it is. I love humans who are starting to see their magnificence and understanding. There's more here than you think. A lot more. A lot more. And so it is.